October 15th, 1992. The Paramount Theater in Chicago buzzed with anticipation as 800 spectators filled the ornate venue for what would become one of the most baffling mysteries in entertainment history. The evening air carried the excitement typical of a sold-out magic show, but by night's end, reality would prove more mysterious than any illusion ever performed on that historic stage. Michael Harrison, a 34-year-old illusionist known for his elaborate escape acts and mind-bending performances, stood backstage adjusting his black cape one final time. Harrison had built his reputation over 12 years of touring, earning recognition as one of America's most promising magicians. His signature trick, the infinity box, had never failed to leave audiences speechless across the country. "So glad to have you here. Comment your city so I can bring cases from your region and also know where you're watching me from." The theater's vintage architecture provided the perfect backdrop for Harrison's Gothic performance style. Red velvet curtains framed the stage where ornate props awaited their moment under the spotlight. The building itself, constructed in 1921, had witnessed countless performances, but none would leave such an indelible mark on its history. At precisely 8:47 p.m., Harrison made his entrance to thunderous applause. The evening's program featured a carefully orchestrated sequence of illusions, each building toward the grand finale that had made Harrison's reputation. Spectators watched in fascination as he performed his classic repertoire: levitation acts, disappearing objects, and mind-reading demonstrations that left the audience questioning the boundaries between reality and impossible. David Miller, Harrison's longtime assistant and stage manager, monitored the performance from the wings. Miller had worked with Harrison for nearly 5 years, learning every intricate detail of the magician's methods. His role extended beyond mere assistance. He served as the technical coordinator, ensuring each illusion executed flawlessly. The production team included Jennifer Walsh, a seasoned theater producer who had organized Harrison's touring schedule for the past 3 years. Walsh coordinated with local venues, managed ticket sales, and supervised the complex logistics required for transporting Harrison's elaborate equipment between cities. As the evening progressed, Harrison's performance maintained its usual precision. Each trick unfolded exactly as rehearsed, drawing gasps and applause from the captivated audience. The theater's security cameras captured every moment, recording what would later become crucial evidence in understanding the night's unprecedented events. The supporting cast moved with practiced efficiency. Amanda Peterson, Harrison's primary stage assistant, helped coordinate the more complex illusions requiring multiple participants. Her graceful movements and theatrical presence complemented Harrison's dramatic style, creating the seamless presentation audiences expected from professional magic performances. Behind the scenes, the technical crew operated sound equipment, lighting systems, and stage machinery with clockwork precision. Every member understood their role in creating the magical atmosphere that made Harrison's shows memorable experiences for theater-goers across the Midwest. At 10:15 p.m., Harrison began preparing for his closing act. The Infinity Box stood center stage, its imposing presence commanding attention from every seat in the theater. The apparatus measured 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet deep, constructed from what appeared to be solid mahogany with brass fittings that caught the stage lights. The box featured multiple panels that opened to reveal its seemingly empty interior. Harrison had performed this illusion hundreds of times during his career, always emerging after exactly 90 seconds of suspense. The trick's appeal lay not just in the disappearance, but in the impossibility of explaining how someone could vanish from such a confined, thoroughly examined space. Miller positioned additional spotlights to illuminate every angle of the box, ensuring the audience could observe Harrison's entry from multiple perspectives. The assistant called for complete silence as Harrison approached the apparatus, his cape flowing dramatically behind him. Security cameras captured Harrison stepping into the box at 10:18 p.m. The timestamp would later become significant as investigators attempted to reconstruct the evening's timeline. Miller closed and locked the box's door, checking each mechanism twice before stepping back to allow the audience an unobstructed view. 90 seconds passed. The theater remained silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning and the soft rustling of programs in nervous hands. Miller approached the box and began the unlocking sequence, his movements confident despite the mounting tension. The door swung open to reveal an empty interior. Harrison had vanished completely, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the echo of audience gasps. Miller searched the box thoroughly, opening every panel and examining each surface. The magician had simply disappeared. What followed challenged everything the audience understood about stage magic. Miller called Harrison's name, expecting him to emerge from a hidden compartment or appear elsewhere on stage. No response came. The assistant checked backstage areas, dressing rooms, and every conceivable hiding place within the theater. Minutes stretched into an hour as theater staff conducted an increasingly frantic search. Jennifer Walsh contacted local authorities, initially believing Harrison might have suffered a medical emergency or accident. The possibility that something had gone genuinely wrong began replacing the assumption that this was part of the performance. Chicago Police Department officers arrived at 11:45 p.m., treating the situation as a missing person case. Detective James Cooper took charge of the initial investigation, interviewing witnesses and examining the theater for any signs of foul play or evidence explaining Harrison's disappearance. The Infinity Box underwent thorough examination by both police technicians and experienced stage magic consultants. Every panel, joint, and mechanism was tested for hidden compartments or escape routes. The apparatus revealed no secrets, appearing exactly as it seemed: a solid wooden box with no means of concealment. Security footage provided investigators with their most crucial evidence. Cameras clearly showed Harrison entering the box, Miller closing and locking the door, and the subsequent opening to reveal an empty interior. No technical malfunction or editing could explain the footage, which captured an apparently impossible event. As dawn approached, the reality became undeniable. Michael Harrison had vanished during his final performance, leaving behind a mystery that would confound investigators, magic experts, and anyone who attempted to explain how a man could simply cease to exist inside a locked box before 800 witnesses. The search was only beginning, but already it was clear that something far more complex than stage magic had occurred that October night. What had happened to Michael Harrison would remain unknown for 31 years, until a discovery would finally reveal the shocking truth behind his impossible disappearance. The morning of October 16, 1992, brought Chicago Police Department Detective James Cooper face to face with what would become the most perplexing case of his 20-year career. Cooper, known for his methodical approach to investigations, arrived at the Paramount Theater as early sunlight filtered through the building's ornate windows, casting long shadows across the stage where Michael Harrison had vanished just hours before. Cooper's initial examination of the crime scene revealed no obvious signs of struggle, break-in, or violence. The theater appeared exactly as it had during the previous evening's performance, with Harrison's equipment arranged precisely as it had been left. The Infinity Box sat center stage, its mahogany surface reflecting the overhead lights, offering no hints about the mystery it contained. The detective's first priority involved interviewing everyone present during Harrison's final performance. David Miller, visibly shaken by the night's events, provided detailed information about the evening's timeline and Harrison's typical preparation routine. Miller emphasized that nothing had seemed unusual about Harrison's behavior or the performance itself until the moment the box opened to reveal emptiness. Jennifer Walsh, the theater producer, offered insights into Harrison's professional relationships and recent booking schedule. She described Harrison as reliable and professional, never missing performances or exhibiting erratic behavior. Walsh noted that Harrison had seemed particularly focused during the weeks leading up to the Chicago engagement, spending extra time rehearsing his routines. Amanda Peterson, Harrison's stage assistant, recounted her observations from backstage during the performance. She had watched Harrison enter the box as she had witnessed hundreds of times before, noting nothing unusual about his demeanor or movements. Peterson emphasized that Harrison had appeared calm and confident, showing no signs of distress or concern. Cooper's investigation expanded to examine Harrison's personal life, searching for potential motives behind his disappearance. The detective contacted Sarah Harrison, the magician's wife of 8 years, who had remained at their home in Detroit during the Chicago engagement. Sarah's initial reaction suggested genuine shock and concern about her husband's vanishing. However, as Cooper delved deeper into Harrison's background, troubling financial information began emerging. Bank records revealed significant debt accumulation over the previous 18 months, with Harrison owing substantial amounts to various creditors. Credit card statements showed increasingly desperate attempts to maintain cash flow through advances and high-interest loans. The detective discovered that Harrison had been experiencing declining bookings during 1991 and early 1992. Competition from younger magicians and changing entertainment preferences had reduced demand for his particular style of performance. Theater owners reported that Harrison's shows, while still well executed, had been drawing smaller audiences than in previous years. More concerning was evidence of Harrison's involvement with unauthorized gambling activities. Cooper found documentation suggesting that Harrison had participated in high-stakes poker games and sports betting through illegal operators. These activities had apparently resulted in substantial losses, creating financial pressure that Harrison had hidden from his family and professional associates. Cooper interviewed several individuals from Chicago's underground gambling scene, many of whom recognized Harrison's name and confirmed his participation in various games during recent visits to the city. Some described Harrison as an increasingly desperate player, making larger bets in attempts to recover previous losses. One particularly significant discovery involved a life insurance policy Harrison had purchased just 6 weeks before his disappearance. The policy, worth $200,000, represented a substantial increase from his previous coverage. The timing of this purchase raised immediate red flags for Cooper, who recognized the potential for insurance fraud. The detective also uncovered evidence of extramarital relationships that Harrison had been conducting. Amanda Peterson, initially interviewed only as a professional associate, eventually admitted to a romantic involvement with Harrison that had been ongoing for several months. This relationship had created additional emotional and financial complications in Harrison's already troubled personal life. Robert Sterling, a respected magician and member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, agreed to examine Harrison's equipment and performance methods. Sterling's expertise in illusion techniques provided valuable insights into the technical aspects of Harrison's disappearance. After thorough examination, Sterling confirmed that the infinity box contained no hidden mechanisms or secret compartments. Sterling's analysis eliminated the possibility that Harrison's vanishing had been accomplished through traditional magic methods. The box's construction, while sophisticated, offered no means for concealment or escape. Sterling concluded that Harrison's disappearance could not be explained through conventional stage magic techniques. The investigation expanded to include Harrison's financial advisors, accountants, and business managers. These interviews revealed a pattern of increasingly erratic financial decisions and growing desperation about Harrison's economic situation. Several advisors had recommended bankruptcy as the most viable solution to Harrison's mounting debts. Cooper discovered that Harrison had been negotiating with potential investors about expanding his touring operation, possibly including television appearances and larger venue bookings. These discussions had reportedly stalled due to Harrison's financial instability and declining market position within the entertainment industry. Charles Harrison, Michael's younger brother, provided additional insights into the magician's state of mind during the weeks preceding his disappearance. Charles described Michael as increasingly withdrawn and secretive, avoiding family gatherings and showing signs of significant stress. He noted that Michael had made several cryptic comments about starting over and finding a way out. The search for Harrison extended beyond Chicago, with law enforcement agencies across the Midwest receiving notifications about his disappearance. Airports, train stations, and bus terminals were provided with Harrison's photograph and description. Border crossings with Canada were alerted to watch for anyone matching his appearance. Jessica Thompson, the theater's costume designer, reported observing Harrison in conversation with 2 unidentified men in the theater's back alley approximately 1 hour before his final performance. Thompson described the men as well-dressed but unfamiliar, noting that their discussion appeared tense and secretive. This observation added another layer of complexity to the investigation. Cooper's examination of Harrison's hotel room revealed additional evidence of his troubled mental state. Personal items appeared hastily packed, and several letters had been started but never completed. One partial letter, apparently intended for Sarah Harrison, contained apologies and references to mistakes that can't be undone. As the investigation progressed through its first week, Cooper began recognizing that Harrison's disappearance involved far more complexity than a simple missing person case. The combination of financial desperation, personal relationships, and professional decline created multiple potential motives for voluntary disappearance. The detectives' growing suspicion focused on the possibility that Harrison had orchestrated his own vanishing, potentially with assistance from accomplices. The timing of the life insurance policy, combined with Harrison's mounting debts and personal problems, suggested a carefully planned scheme rather than spontaneous disappearance. However, one crucial question remained unanswered. How had Harrison managed to vanish from a locked box before hundreds of witnesses without leaving any trace of his escape method? This puzzle would continue haunting investigators for decades, until a discovery 31 years later would finally reveal the shocking truth behind Michael Harrison's impossible disappearance. 2 weeks into the investigation, Detective James Cooper found himself confronting a web of deception that extended far beyond Michael Harrison's financial troubles. October 30th, 1992, marked a turning point in the case when Cooper received an unexpected phone call from Timothy Walsh, a private investigator in Las Vegas who had been following Harrison's activities for nearly 6 months. Walsh revealed that Harrison had been under surveillance by multiple parties, including creditors, gambling associates, and at least one insurance company that had grown suspicious of his recent policy applications. The private investigator had documented Harrison's movements across several states, uncovering a pattern of increasingly reckless behavior that painted a disturbing picture of a man spiraling toward desperate measures. The surveillance records showed Harrison had visited Las Vegas 4 times during the summer of 1992, each trip lasting 3 to 5 days. During these visits, Harrison had accumulated substantial gambling debts at several casinos, often betting amounts far exceeding his known income. Casino security footage captured Harrison's increasingly erratic behavior, including heated confrontations with dealers and security personnel. Cooper's investigation took on new urgency when Walsh provided photographs of Harrison meeting with Anthony Russo, a known associate of organized crime figures in Chicago. These meetings had occurred in various locations throughout the city, always in seemingly casual settings that suggested deliberate efforts to avoid detection. The connection between Harrison and Russo raised alarming possibilities about the true nature of the magician's disappearance. Further investigation into Russo's background revealed his involvement in various illegal enterprises, including loan sharking, gambling operations, and insurance fraud schemes. Russo's associates had been linked to several suspicious disappearances over the previous decade, though no charges had ever been successfully prosecuted due to lack of evidence. Cooper interviewed Harrison's accountant, Gregory Foster, who reluctantly admitted that Harrison had requested assistance with complex financial arrangements during the weeks preceding his disappearance. Foster described Harrison's inquiries about offshore banking, asset protection trusts, and methods for transferring funds without creating paper trails. These requests had made Foster uncomfortable, leading him to refuse Harrison's proposals. The accountant revealed that Harrison had specifically asked about procedures for making his wife the beneficiary of assets while ensuring she could not be held responsible for his debts. Foster had explained that such arrangements typically required sophisticated legal planning and often involved questionable ethical considerations. Amanda Peterson's role in Harrison's scheme became increasingly apparent as Cooper continued his investigation. Phone records showed extensive communication between Peterson and Harrison during the months leading up to his disappearance. Many of these calls had occurred late at night or during hours when Harrison should have been at home with his wife. Peterson eventually admitted that Harrison had discussed plans for leaving his current life behind and starting fresh somewhere else. She claimed Harrison had spoken about these ideas in abstract terms, never providing specific details about timing or methods. Peterson insisted she had assumed Harrison was simply expressing frustration rather than planning actual implementation. However, Cooper discovered that Peterson had recently opened a new bank account and made several large cash deposits that could not be explained by her modest salary as Harrison's assistant. When confronted with this evidence, Peterson became evasive and requested legal representation before answering further questions. Sarah Harrison's cooperation with the investigation began revealing additional complexities in her husband's behavior. She admitted that Michael had become increasingly secretive during the final months of their marriage, often claiming business trips that she could not verify. Sarah also acknowledged that their relationship had deteriorated significantly, with Michael becoming distant and occasionally hostile. The investigation uncovered evidence that Harrison had been systematically liquidating assets without his wife's knowledge. Several valuable items from their home had been sold through private dealers with the proceeds deposited into accounts that Sarah could not access. Harrison had also taken cash advances against their home's equity, creating financial obligations that Sarah only discovered after his disappearance. Cooper's examination of Harrison's correspondence revealed communications with individuals in several foreign countries, including Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. These letters discussed potential business opportunities and investment possibilities, though the specific nature of these ventures remained unclear. Several of the letters contained references to numbered accounts and confidential financial arrangements. The detective discovered that Harrison had been studying Spanish intensively during the months before his disappearance, enrolling in private tutoring sessions and purchasing extensive language learning materials. This preparation suggested long-term planning rather than spontaneous decision-making about his future. Benjamin Clark, Harrison's former business manager, provided crucial information about the magician's psychological state during their final meetings. Clark described Harrison as increasingly paranoid and suspicious, frequently checking for surveillance and expressing concerns about people following him. Harrison had also made several comments about needing to disappear permanently to escape his problems. Clark revealed that Harrison had specifically inquired about the legal implications of life insurance payouts in cases of mysterious disappearances. Harrison had seemed particularly interested in the time periods required before missing persons could be declared legally dead, and the procedures insurance companies followed when investigating suspicious claims. The investigation expanded to include Harrison's extended family members, who provided additional insights into his character and recent behavior. Harrison's sister, Nicole Harrison, described her brother as intelligent but increasingly manipulative, often involving family members in schemes they did not fully understand. She noted that Michael had always been fascinated by puzzles and complex problems, treating real-life challenges as intellectual exercises to be solved. Cooper discovered that Harrison had maintained several safe deposit boxes in different banks, most of which Sarah Harrison knew nothing about. Court orders allowed investigators to examine these boxes, revealing thousands of dollars in cash, multiple false identification documents, and detailed maps of various South American countries. The false identifications appeared professionally created, suggesting Harrison had established connections with skilled forgers. The safe deposit boxes also contained photographs of Harrison with significantly altered appearance, including different hairstyles, facial hair, and clothing styles that would make recognition difficult. These images suggested that Harrison had been experimenting with disguises and identity changes for an extended period before his disappearance. Most disturbing was the discovery of detailed floor plans of the Paramount Theater, including architectural drawings that highlighted areas not typically accessible to performers. These plans had been annotated in Harrison's handwriting, with specific attention paid to basement levels, utility passages, and building modifications that had occurred during recent renovations. Cooper realized that Harrison had conducted extensive research into the theater's structure, far beyond what would be necessary for a standard performance. The annotations suggested knowledge of hidden spaces and access routes that could potentially explain his mysterious vanishing, though the exact methods remained unclear. The investigation had revealed a carefully orchestrated plan involving multiple accomplices, sophisticated preparation, and detailed knowledge of legal and financial systems. However, the most crucial question remained unanswered. How had Harrison actually executed his escape from the locked box in full view of hundreds of witnesses? The answer to this puzzle would not emerge for another 3 decades. when an unexpected discovery would finally expose the shocking truth behind one of history's most elaborate deceptions. March 15, 2023. 31 years after Michael Harrison's mysterious disappearance, retired illusionist William Foster sat in his workshop in Burbank, California, surrounded by decades of magic memorabilia and technical diagrams. At 67 years old, Foster had spent his career mastering the art of escape and had recently begun documenting the methods behind history's greatest unsolved magic mysteries for a planned autobiography. Foster's interest in the Harrison case had been rekindled by a television documentary aired earlier that year, which featured interviews with the original investigators and witness accounts from that October night in 1992. The program's portrayal of the case as an impossible vanishing had challenged Foster's professional understanding of illusion principles, motivating him to conduct his own investigation. Unlike the original investigators, Foster approached the mystery with decades of specialized knowledge about escape techniques, stage construction, and the psychology of misdirection. His expertise in creating seemingly impossible illusions provided a unique perspective that law enforcement had lacked during the initial investigation. Foster began by obtaining copies of all available evidence from the Chicago Police Department's cold case files. The department had maintained comprehensive records of the investigation, including witness statements, security footage, and detailed photographs of the Infinity Box and theater layout. Detective Cooper, now retired, had personally ensured that all materials were preserved for potential future investigation. The retired magician's first breakthrough came from studying the original architectural plans of the Paramount Theater, which he compared with renovation records from the 1980s and early 1990s. Foster discovered that significant structural modifications had been made to the building during the years immediately preceding Harrison's disappearance, including upgrades to the stage area and basement levels. These renovation records revealed that Harrison had personally contacted the theater's management in early 1992, requesting detailed information about the planned improvements. Harrison had claimed his interest was professional, stating that he needed to understand the stage dimensions and technical capabilities for planning his performance. However, Foster recognized that Harrison's inquiries had extended far beyond typical performer requirements. Foster's analysis of the security footage using modern digital enhancement technology revealed details that had been missed during the original investigation. Frame-by-frame examination showed subtle inconsistencies in the lighting patterns around the Infinity Box during the moments immediately before and after Harrison's disappearance. The enhanced footage also revealed that several audience members had been strategically positioned in locations that would have provided optimal viewing angles for observing any technical manipulation of the box. Foster realized that these individuals might have been accomplices rather than random spectators, though identifying them after 3 decades presented significant challenges. Foster's investigation led him to contact Joshua Miller, David Miller's son, who had inherited his father's personal effects after David's death in 2015. Among these possessions, Joshua discovered a collection of notebooks and technical diagrams that his father had never mentioned during the original investigation. The notebooks contained detailed sketches of theater layouts, timing sequences, and what appeared to be rehearsal schedules for complex coordinated activities. Most significantly, they included precise measurements of spaces within the Paramount Theater that matched the architectural modifications Foster had identified in the renovation records. Foster recognized that these diagrams represented far more than simple stage management notes. The drawings showed intimate knowledge of the theater's hidden spaces, including service tunnels, utility areas, and abandoned passages that connected different levels of the building. This information suggested that David Miller had possessed crucial knowledge about Harrison's escape route. The retired illusionist's research expanded to include interviews with surviving members of Harrison's crew and associates who had not been thoroughly questioned during the original investigation. Many of these individuals had scattered across the country in the decades following Harrison's disappearance, but Foster's persistence in locating them yielded valuable new information. Catherine Sullivan, the theater's former maintenance supervisor, revealed that Harrison had made multiple unauthorized visits to the building during the weeks before his performance. Sullivan had discovered Harrison in restricted areas on several occasions, but Harrison had explained his presence as preparation for technical aspects of his show. Sullivan's records showed that Harrison had specifically requested access to the theater's basement levels, claiming he needed to inspect electrical systems that would support his equipment. However, Foster realized that these areas contained far more than electrical infrastructure, including abandoned passages that had been sealed during previous renovations. Foster's breakthrough discovery came when he located construction worker Eric Thompson, who had participated in the 1991 renovation project at the Paramount Theater. Thompson remembered being approached by a man matching Harrison's description, who had offered substantial payment for information about the building's structural modifications. Thompson revealed that Harrison had been particularly interested in areas where new construction had created hidden spaces between walls and floors. The worker had provided Harrison with detailed information about these spaces, including access points and dimensions, believing that Harrison was a legitimate researcher studying historic theater architecture. This information allowed Foster to create a comprehensive map of potential escape routes that Harrison could have used during his disappearance. The map revealed a complex network of passages that could allow someone to move between different areas of the theater without being detected by security cameras or witnesses. Foster's investigation also uncovered evidence that Harrison had been conducting test runs of his escape plan during the months before his disappearance. Hotel records from Harrison's previous visits to Chicago showed that he had stayed in the city for extended periods, far longer than necessary for typical performance preparation. During these visits, Harrison had rented storage space near the theater and purchased various construction tools and materials that would be necessary for modifying the hidden passages Thompson had described. Credit card records showed purchases of items including rope, flashlights, and small excavation tools that could be used for creating or enlarging access points. Foster realized that Harrison's plan had required extensive physical preparation of the theater itself, involving modifications that would need to be completed well in advance of his final performance. This discovery explained why Harrison had shown such specific interest in the renovation timeline and building access. The retired magician's research revealed that Harrison had established a sophisticated support network for his disappearance plan. Phone records showed extensive communication between Harrison and individuals in several major cities, including people with expertise in construction, transportation, and document forgery. Foster discovered that Harrison had been paying various individuals for services that, when combined, would have provided all the technical support necessary for a complex escape and identity change. These payments had been disguised as legitimate business expenses, making them difficult to trace during the original investigation. The investigation also revealed that Harrison had been stockpiling resources in multiple locations, including cash, supplies, and transportation arrangements that would have allowed him to disappear completely after his escape from the theater. Bank records showed systematic withdrawal of funds and conversion to untraceable assets during the months preceding his disappearance. Foster's analysis of the evidence confirmed that Harrison's vanishing had been the result of an elaborate conspiracy involving multiple accomplices and extensive preparation. However, the most crucial element remained the physical method of escape from the locked box in full view of hundreds of witnesses. The answer to this final puzzle would require Foster to return to Chicago and conduct a physical examination of the Paramount Theater itself, where he would make a discovery that would finally reveal the shocking truth behind Michael Harrison's impossible disappearance and expose a deception that had fooled investigators for over 3 decades. April 3, 2023. William Foster stood on the stage of the Paramount Theater in Chicago, his hands running along the worn wooden floorboards where Michael Harrison had performed his final illusion 31 years earlier. The theater management had graciously allowed Foster access to conduct his investigation, intrigued by his reputation and the possibility of finally solving their building's most famous mystery. Foster's examination began with a meticulous study of the stage construction using ground-penetrating radar equipment to map the spaces beneath the performance area. The technology revealed a complex network of voids and passages that extended far beyond what the original architectural plans had indicated, confirming Foster's theory that Harrison had extensively modified the theater's infrastructure. The radar scans identified a previously unknown chamber directly beneath the location where the infinity box had been positioned during Harrison's final performance. This space measured approximately 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 5 feet high, providing sufficient room for a person to hide comfortably. Most significantly, the chamber connected to a series of service tunnels that led to multiple exit points throughout the building. Foster's investigation revealed that this hidden chamber had been created during the 1991 renovations when Harrison had gained access to the construction site. The magician had worked with accomplices to excavate the space and install sophisticated mechanical systems that would allow him to execute his escape plan. The work had been disguised as legitimate infrastructure improvements, making it virtually undetectable to casual inspection. The chamber's construction required extensive engineering knowledge and significant financial investment. Foster discovered receipts for specialized equipment, including hydraulic lifting mechanisms, soundproofing materials, and air circulation systems that would have made extended occupation of the space possible. These purchases had been made through shell companies that Harrison had established specifically for this purpose. Foster's examination of the infinity box itself revealed the true genius of Harrison's deception. The box contained a sophisticated trapdoor system that could be operated from within, allowing Harrison to escape into the hidden chamber below while creating the illusion that he had vanished completely. The mechanism was so well engineered that it left no visible evidence of tampering when closed. The trapdoor system incorporated multiple safety features and backup mechanisms, ensuring that Harrison could not become trapped if something went wrong during the escape. Foster found evidence of extensive testing and refinement of these systems during the months leading up to Harrison's disappearance, with multiple rehearsals conducted in complete secrecy. Foster's investigation revealed that David Miller had played a crucial role in the deception, serving as more than just an unwitting assistant. Miller had been Harrison's primary accomplice, responsible for coordinating the timing of the escape and ensuring that the mechanical systems functioned properly during the performance. The notebooks found among Miller's possessions contained detailed operational instructions for the escape mechanism. Miller's participation in the scheme explained many of the inconsistencies that had puzzled the original investigators. His apparent shock and confusion during the investigation had been carefully rehearsed performances designed to deflect suspicion. Miller had maintained this deception for the remainder of his life, taking the secret to his grave in 2015. Foster discovered that the escape plan had involved multiple phases, with Harrison's initial disappearance into the hidden chamber serving only as the first step. Once concealed beneath the stage, Harrison had waited for several hours while police conducted their initial search of the theater. During this time, he had used the service tunnels to move to a different location within the building, eventually emerging through an exit point that connected to Chicago's underground tunnel system. The investigation revealed that Harrison had spent months studying Chicago's infrastructure, including the extensive network of utility tunnels, abandoned subway passages, and maintenance corridors that connected buildings throughout the downtown area. This research had allowed him to plan an escape route that would take him far from the theater without being detected by surface surveillance. Foster found evidence that Harrison had established multiple safe houses throughout Chicago, stocked with supplies, clothing, and false identification documents. These locations had been carefully chosen to provide access to the underground tunnel network, allowing Harrison to move between them without exposure to public areas where he might be recognized. The investigation uncovered sophisticated communication systems that Harrison had installed throughout his escape route, including hidden radio equipment and coded signaling devices that allowed coordination with his accomplices. These systems had enabled real-time monitoring of police activities and adjustment of the escape plan as circumstances changed. Foster discovered that Harrison had maintained contact with his accomplice network for several years after his disappearance, gradually transferring his accumulated wealth to offshore accounts and establishing his new identity. The magician had lived under assumed names in various countries, carefully avoiding detection while building a new life far from his previous existence. Bank records from multiple countries revealed that Harrison had successfully accessed the life insurance proceeds through intermediaries, with the money eventually reaching accounts under his control. The insurance company had paid the claim after the standard waiting period, having found no evidence of fraud during their investigation. Foster's research revealed that Harrison had assumed the identity of Thomas Richardson, a fictional persona supported by forged documents and carefully constructed background information. Under this identity, Harrison had lived in Brazil for nearly a decade, working as a consultant for entertainment venues and maintaining a low profile while enjoying the proceeds of his elaborate deception. The investigation uncovered evidence that Harrison had attempted to contact his wife Sarah on several occasions during the years following his disappearance, though he had never revealed his true identity or circumstances. These contacts had been made through intermediaries and anonymous communications, suggesting that Harrison had experienced some regret about the impact of his actions on his family. Foster discovered that Harrison's new life had eventually unraveled due to his inability to completely abandon his passion for magic and performance. Under his assumed identity, Harrison had begun performing at small venues in South America, gradually attracting attention from investigators who specialized in tracking missing persons and fugitives. The investigation revealed that Harrison had died in 2019 in São Paulo, Brazil, apparently from natural causes related to heart disease. His death had gone unnoticed by American authorities, as he had been living under his assumed identity and had no known connections to his previous life. Foster's discovery of Harrison's fate finally provided closure to a mystery that had remained unsolved for over 3 decades. The evidence Foster had assembled conclusively proved that Michael Harrison's disappearance had been an elaborate fraud involving insurance deception, identity theft, and abandonment of legal obligations. The case represented one of the most sophisticated escape plans ever documented, requiring years of preparation and the coordination of multiple accomplices. However, Foster's investigation had also uncovered a deeper truth about the human cost of Harrison's deception. The magician's elaborate scheme had destroyed multiple lives, betrayed the trust of those closest to him, and created lasting trauma that extended far beyond the immediate participants. The price of Harrison's freedom had been paid by others who had suffered the consequences of his choices for over 30 years. May 10, 2023. Federal Bureau of Investigation agent Rebecca Martinez sat across from David Miller's son Joshua in a sterile conference room at the FBI's Chicago field office. Foster's discoveries had prompted a formal federal investigation into what authorities now recognized as one of the most elaborate insurance fraud schemes in American history. The case had evolved from a decades-old missing person investigation into a complex examination of financial crimes, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Martinez had spent 3 weeks reviewing Foster's evidence and cross-referencing it with financial records, immigration documents, and international law enforcement databases. The scope of Harrison's deception became clear as investigators traced the flow of money, false identities, and coordinated activities that had enabled his successful disappearance and subsequent life as a fugitive. The FBI's investigation confirmed that Harrison had defrauded multiple insurance companies of approximately $1.2 million through various policies he had established in the months before his disappearance. These funds had been systematically transferred through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts, ultimately supporting Harrison's new life in South America for nearly 3 decades. Joshua Miller's cooperation with federal investigators proved crucial in understanding the full extent of his father's involvement in the conspiracy. The notebooks and documents found among David Miller's possessions provided detailed evidence of the planning and execution phases of Harrison's escape. These materials revealed that David Miller had received substantial payments for his participation, money that had supported his family for years after Harrison's disappearance. The investigation revealed that Amanda Peterson had also played a more significant role than originally suspected. Peterson had helped establish several of the false identities and financial accounts that Harrison had used during his escape. She had maintained contact with Harrison for nearly 5 years after his disappearance, gradually transferring additional funds and resources to support his new life abroad. Federal investigators discovered that Peterson had received payments totaling over $300,000 for her assistance in the conspiracy, These funds had been disguised as legitimate business transactions and consulting fees, making them difficult to trace during the original investigation. Peterson had used this money to relocate to Arizona, where she had established a successful business and maintained a low profile for decades. The FBI's investigation expanded to include other accomplices who had provided specialized services for Harrison's escape plan. Construction workers, document forgers, financial advisors, and transportation coordinators had all contributed to the conspiracy, creating a network of criminal activity that extended across multiple states and countries. Anthony Russo, the organized crime associate who had been photographed with Harrison, had served as a coordinator for many of these services. Russo's connections in the criminal underworld had provided Harrison with access to sophisticated resources that would not have been available through legitimate channels. The investigation revealed that Russo had received significant payments for facilitating these arrangements. However, the passage of time had created significant obstacles for prosecuting many of the participants in Harrison's conspiracy. The statute of limitations had expired for many of the crimes involved, and several key accomplices had died in the decades following Harrison's disappearance. David Miller's death in 2015 had eliminated one of the primary witnesses who could have provided detailed testimony about the conspiracy's operations. Amanda Peterson's advanced age and deteriorating health complicated efforts to pursue criminal charges against her. Now 76 years old and suffering from dementia, Peterson was deemed unlikely to stand trial even if charges were filed. Her medical condition also made it difficult to obtain reliable testimony about her role in the conspiracy. The investigation did result in significant civil action against Sarah Harrison, who had knowingly received insurance proceeds under false pretenses. Although Sarah claimed ignorance of her husband's survival, financial records revealed that she had received anonymous communications and funds that suggested knowledge of Harrison's continued existence. The insurance companies filed lawsuits seeking recovery of the fraudulent payments plus interest and penalties. Sarah Harrison, now 73 years old, faced the loss of her home and retirement savings as insurance companies pursued collection of the fraudulent claims. The civil litigation revealed that Sarah had lived comfortably for 3 decades on money obtained through her husband's deception, even though she may not have been fully aware of the circumstances surrounding the payments. The investigation uncovered evidence that Harrison had attempted to arrange additional insurance fraud schemes during his time in South America. Using his false identity, Harrison had applied for life insurance policies and established financial arrangements that would have continued generating fraudulent proceeds. However, these plans had been abandoned when Harrison realized that international investigators were beginning to track missing persons cases more effectively. Foster's investigation had also revealed the location of Harrison's remains in Brazil, allowing authorities to confirm his death and officially close the missing person case. Harrison had been buried under his assumed name in a cemetery in São Paulo, with his death certificate listing heart failure as the cause. Brazilian authorities cooperated with American investigators to verify the circumstances of Harrison's death and confirm his identity through DNA analysis. The case prompted significant changes in insurance industry practices and investigation procedures. Companies began implementing more sophisticated background checks and verification processes for large policy purchases, particularly those involving individuals with financial difficulties or unusual circumstances. The Harrison case became a training example for insurance investigators studying fraud detection and prevention. The Paramount Theater's management decided to permanently retire the Infinity Box from their inventory, recognizing that the apparatus had become too closely associated with criminal activity to continue using for legitimate performances. The theater established a small exhibit commemorating the case, presenting it as an example of how sophisticated deception could fool even experienced investigators for decades. Law enforcement agencies updated their protocols for investigating disappearances and potential fraud cases, incorporating lessons learned from the Harrison investigation. The case demonstrated the importance of considering financial motives and sophisticated planning in cases that initially appeared to involve impossible circumstances or unexplained phenomena. The investigation's conclusion brought mixed emotions for the surviving family members and associates affected by Harrison's deception. While the truth finally provided answers to questions that had persisted for over 3 decades, it also revealed the extent to which trusted individuals had participated in an elaborate betrayal that had caused lasting harm to innocent victims. Detective James Cooper, now 89 years old, expressed satisfaction that the case had finally been solved, though he acknowledged disappointment that the statute of limitations prevented prosecution of the primary perpetrators. Cooper credited Foster's expertise and persistence with achieving a breakthrough that had eluded law enforcement for decades, demonstrating the value of specialized knowledge in solving complex cases. The Harrison case entered law enforcement textbooks as an example of sophisticated criminal planning and the importance of considering financial motives in seemingly impossible disappearances. The investigation revealed that even the most elaborate deceptions eventually unravel when subjected to sustained examination by experts with appropriate knowledge and resources. Foster's investigation had not only solved a famous mystery, but had also provided justice for victims who had suffered the consequences of Harrison's deception for over 30 years. While criminal prosecution was no longer possible, the exposure of the truth ensured that Harrison's elaborate scheme would be remembered not as an impressive illusion, but as a calculated betrayal that had destroyed the lives of those who trusted him most.